Hi! You're listening to Scream Girl Squad. You can't do it if you laugh.
But it's the worst.
I know.
Okay. Okay, try it again.
Howdy, y'all.
Oh. I didn't laugh. I just rolled my eyes.
I know. It's really great. Hey, everybody. In my normal Jill voice. You are listening to Scream Girl Squad.
Sure are.
Yep. This is Jill. It's really bad at this.
This is Caryn.
Okay, we're going to do this again.
Oh, no, we're done. I'm using the other one.
All right.
There's a mobile version of Mario Kart, by the way.
I've been playing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of hard.
It looks good. My friend Eric at work was showing me, and it looks legitimately difficult.
It's really fun, but it is really difficult because you just have to, like, swipe to steer.
Yeah.
And
that looks worse than, do you remember with the Wii? It came with the steering wheel.
Yeah. Well, and you can tilt your phone, but that was so much worse. I recommend it. It's fun.
Oh, I'm definitely going to download it. Probably after you go home.
Good. As you should. I forgot I was going to tell you to start playing it.
I also do have some tasks left on that Untitled Goose game that I've been playing that is amazing. Where you just run around honking at people and, like, making their lives miserable as an adorable little goose.
I really want to try it.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's only $15 on the Switch, and it's worth every penny.
Yeah.
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 Speaking of things that are worth every penny, Jill and I found ourselves back at Top Hat Video today.
Woo! The hat!
We now have, like, a pretty good rhythm going with our older movies that we review, because Top Hat lets you have them for a week.
Yep.
So we returned...
Darkness Falls. I had to think about it. I was like, it! No, that was...
No. We returned Darkness Falls, and we rented the 1963 version of The Haunting.
We sure did, which is great, because if we didn't take it back and rent another one, I would never take the movie back.
Yeah, that's the downside of physical things that you rent. They must be physically returned.
I'm not what people call responsible.
That's the one thing that Top Hat needs, and if they already have one, I'm going to feel like a total dingus. Do they have a drive-up return?
No.
Okay, so it's not just that I walk right by it or something.
No, I have to physically get out of my car.
It is 2019. I literally almost said it's 2016 because I don't know when we are. But it's 2019.
What year is this?
I shouldn't have to get out of my car. Return my DVDs.
It's good for you. Suck it up, Buttercup.
Yeah.
I didn't do it.
So we rented the 1963 version of The Haunting, which we've been really excited about watching for a while because we both also recently read Shirley Jackson's novel, The Haunting of Hill House.
Absolutely. And then after this, we want to watch the 1999 version of The Haunting. Mm-hmm. And then the 2018, is that when it came out?
Yeah, I think so.
TV series that came out. So look forward to those in the future.
Yep.
Speaking of, Amity had never watched the Haunting of Hill House series. So we were talking about it at work today, and I was like, are you kidding me? She's like my scary movie buddy and listens to our podcast every week. Hi, Amity.
Hi, Amity. I miss you.
And so I made her start watching it, and she like listened to a couple, and she came over to my desk after, and she's like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I told you.
Yeah, she needs to watch them proper, because half the amazingness in that series is all the stuff they put in the background.
Yes, I did tell her that, but she was like, I can't watch it at home at night.
By myself.
Yeah.
At night, in the dark.
In the dark. Nobody goes any further than that.
So the Shirley Jackson novel, The Haunting of Hill House, is pretty famous. It came out... Ooh...
Oh, 1959. So not too terribly long before the movie came out.
Yeah, 1959. As you probably picked up from our laundry list of versions we're going to watch, this has been made several times. But on the off chance that you're not already familiar with the story of The Haunting of Hill House, it is about a house that's built back into the hills in some part of the Northeast. I don't think that they specify either in the book or in the film exactly where it is.
I can't remember, so I'm going to go with no.
Yeah, I don't think that they do. So it's named for the hills, into which it's been built. And it's a bad seed. Like if a house was born bad, it was Hill House. It did a lot of bad things, I guess. There's been lots of mysterious deaths there. There's been lots of drama and strife and unhappiness. And this doctor is very excited to find a genuinely haunted house so that he can have some experiments there and have some people hang out at the house for a few weeks and document what they sense and what they hear and what they experience, because he's very interested in essentially proving the existence of the paranormal, which I think he calls the supernormal and the abnormal throughout the film. Mm-hmm. So that's his whole thing. He's setting up this experiment so he can essentially prove his passion, that he's very passionate about ghosts and very passionate about humankind. And this is his big opportunity to do both things. So he brings together some people that have psychic phenomena in their background to stay at the house with him and record the spookiness that ensues.
Yep.
Pretty classic haunted house story.
Yes.
Like the classic haunted house story. So, Jill, was this wasn't the first time you'd seen this version?
No. Probably fourth or fifth. Third or fourth.
How old were you when you first saw it?
Not old enough.
Did it give you nightmares?
I don't think it ever gave me nightmares, but I remember watching it when I was quite young. But I was telling Caryn before this, I get this one confused with the House on Haunted Hill, which is Vincent Price. And I watched way more Vincent Price movies growing up. And so I kind of got these two confused in my head. So I must have watched them both around the same time, which would be like 9 or 10.
And when I was a kid, I got all black and white movies confused when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I had a hard time keeping them straight.
Yep.
So The House on Haunted Hill, that's the one that we thought there was a second cassette tape to.
Yes.
But it was just that it was over.
Nope. It just ended in a real weird place, which it's one of my favorite. Like, I love that movie, so we should absolutely watch it.
Yes.
There's dancing skeletons and all kinds of glorious.
Well, and what makes that movie enjoyable to me still is also one of my favorite things about this movie, about The Haunting, because it's so fascinating to watch the way that they did things to make a scary movie.
Absolutely.
The camera movements, the sounds that they used, the kind of way that they snuck around special effects, because everything had to be a practical effect or it had to be a film trick.
Yep.
And I thought that was so cool.
Very cool. Especially in this movie, which we'll get into. But
yeah,
I loved all the little filming nuances that, like, make you feel unsettled.
Yeah.
So even when nothing scary was happening, you were ready for it. Like, you were waiting for it to happen, which is just as scary as when something scary happens, I think.
When we talk about this all the time, how important it is to build up the tension. And this movie unsettled you. And in the book and in this version, they talk about how Hill House was built purposely crookedly. Like, there's not a square room in the house. All of the rooms are kind of strange shapes. There's not a single 90-degree angle. So all of the rooms sort of curve together and it creates this maze-like effect. And one of the characters comments that it puts you in a state of discomfort and confusion. And that's kind of what they achieved with this movie, too.
Absolutely.
You felt off kilter while you're watching it, like you're trying to get your bearings in a fun house. So, super well done.
They did a good job of transporting you to Hill House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So, why don't we go ahead and rate it and dive into spoilers so we can talk in depth about all of the special effects and things that worked, or practical effects, I should say.
Yeah.
So, Jill and I always rate movies on 2 scales. The first being how much we enjoyed it. That's the fun rating. And we always use food. Because as I told the lady at the deli I went to for lunch today, it's easy to fall in love with food. She said she makes her sandwiches with love. And I said, that makes perfect sense to me. And dang if that sandwich wasn't amazing, by the way.
Love Food is a love language.
Totally.
Absolutely.
So we usually pick something either that we've been craving or ate recently or enjoyed during the movie to use as our fun rating scale. And then we rate it on Fright as well. We have a Fright rating, and we'll use something directly from the movie for that. And we rate them both on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest.
So our enjoyability, we are basing on lemon tarts.
Oh my gosh, the lemon tarts.
Made by my roommate Rachel, who we rave about her cooking on this podcast quite often because she's freaking amazing.
She is awesome. And she does my favorite mistake in cooking, which is always making too much. So I reap the benefits.
I love that Caryn calls it a mistake. It's totally on purpose. She wants to eat them all and then realizes we should probably give some of these away.
I base that on my own personal experience. Yeah. I have been married forever, and it's always just been the two of us. It will never be any more than the two of us. I am incapable of cooking for 2 people. Like, the minimum I can cook for is 6.
It's because you are a Basque grandma and need to feed a horde of angry, hungry farmers.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yep. It's like in your DNA.
But Rachel, if you're listening, the lemon tarts were so good. They lived up to their name. They were so perfectly tart and fresh. Oh, she made the lemon custard from scratch. I swear to God, you could taste the lemon zest. Like, you could taste the fact that she had zested those lemons by hand.
Yep.
And she made the whipped cream by hand, and she made the pastry crust by hand, and it was amazing. So, I can't think of a better pairing for this movie because I loved both things so much.
I can agree with that. Yeah.
So I want to know, out of 5 lemon tarts, how would you rate The Haunting in terms of enjoyability?
I would go with 4, probably. It wasn't a perfect experience, but I really, really enjoyed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly agree. I think it was a 4 out of 5.
Yep.
They did a few things that I didn't like and that didn't make any sense to me. And then the pacing to me was a little bit slow. Mm-hmm. But that's the way that they made films at the time.
Absolutely. And it wasn't, like, uncomfortably slow.
No.
It was like a slow burn. Like, you needed that build up. I don't know. It was good.
Well, and the pacing 100% matched the book.
Absolutely. And better, in fact, because we can talk about the book, but I compared it at work today to the first Lord of the Rings book, where the first 150 pages are talking about hobbits that have absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the book, because I was like halfway through the audiobook and they had just been touring the house.
I know, you texted me and you said they've been touring the house for 4 hours.
Like, nothing else had happened.
Yeah.
So I do feel like this movie got to the point a little quicker, which I'm good with.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like, the book did a beautiful job. Like, I felt like I was in the house. Her descriptions of everything, like, were spot on. It was just like, after a while, okay, enough here, you know?
Yeah, and we'll dive more into the changes that they made from the book that I liked and the ones that I didn't like in the spoilers, but they did make some pretty significant changes from the source material. So, and like I said, some good, some bad.
Yes.
But I think it's a pretty solid 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
How about Fright Rating?
I might go with 3. Because it definitely was a little more unsettling. And then I had quite a jump scare that I knew it was coming, but then forgot. So, yeah. But I was quite unsettled the whole time, which is good.
I think I can definitely see giving it a 3 on an adjusted Fright Rating, considering that it came out in 1963.
Yeah.
It's like when my mom made me watch Salem's Lot when I was a teenager, and I was like, did the vampire get the guy? Like, what just happened? And she's like, yeah. They're like, did you see the feet being dragged off screen? Of course the vampire got the guy. And I'm like, but there was like a man in a field, and then vampire eyes, and then the man's feet are being dragged away. So I think you have to, I personally have to adjust my scale based on the type of horror that I've grown used to as a millennial.
Yeah.
But I think they did a pretty incredible job with the tools that they had. I would probably lean towards giving it a 2.5, but I'm also comfortable calling it a 3.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's not going to keep me up tonight, but if I go home and the cardboard cutout of David Tennant is somewhere, I'll jump.
Well,
that happens regularly.
And as always, between watching the movie and recording just now, I was wandering around the house taking care of cat chores because otherwise everyone would hear how hungry George is. And I definitely was a little unsettled by the dark corners as per usual. So that's usually a good sign of an effective horror movie.
Absolutely.
Before we dive into the spoiler-full synopsis, I want to talk a little bit about the cast.
Sure.
And this film, they reduced the number of characters from the book so that it was a much more intimate cast. There's essentially 4 characters in the whole movie. There's the doctor, who they renamed from the book from Dr. Montague to Dr. Markway. There's Luke Sanderson, who is the heir to Hill House, who's along to look after his family's inheritance and for propriety.
Yeah.
And then there is Eleanor Lance in the book, Lance in the movie, but Vance in the book, who you might call the main character, and Theodora, who is kind of a bohemian, not quite a pixie dream girl character, but kind of close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jill mentioned the guy that played Luke Sanderson earlier. He's played by Russ Tamblyn.
Oh, Russ Tamblyn. I love Russ Tamblyn ever since he was Gideon in 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. So, big fan of the Russ.
And he's in West Side Story.
Yeah, and he's in West Side Story. And
Once a Jet, always a Jet.
Yes, he's the guy who gets stabbed. And let's see. Yeah, and then this movie, he's also famous for being the father of Amber Tamblyn.
Oh, that makes sense.
Then the doctor.
The doctor's who I wanted to talk about. This entire thing, letting you talk about Russ Tamblyn and all that stuff, this was a ruse because I wanted to talk about Richard Johnson, who plays Dr. Markway.
Shut up, his name's Richard Johnson.
I assume his friends called him Dick.
I can't stop laughing.
Richard Johnson.
Crying from laughing.
And I think it's pretty appropriate that I now consider 1963 Richard Johnson as a total sex symbol.
I already told Caryn, when we talk about this movie, I'm describing him as Dr. Smolder because every time he would look at the camera, it was this intense, he probably taught Flynn Rider how to smolder. It was insane.
He is an attractive man. He was distractingly attractive, honestly.
He had really great eyes and dimples, which I love in a man.
The dimples.
So.
And he just...
He had a classiness about him that was I don't know. It was just real attractive.
I just wanted to lean forward on a table in front of him and be like, tell me everything you know about
He
ghosts.
feels like... Do you remember when I had a crush on my chemistry professor? It feels like...
He is. He's a hot professor.
Yes! When you have a crush on a teacher because he's really passionate about what he's teaching about.
Yes.
This guy had that kind of appeal. You're so smart and I just want to hear you talk about this thing forever. He totally had that
you
going
nailed
for
it.
him. Yeah.
That is exactly why he was so hot.
Uh-huh. Plus he wore, tweed jackets with elbow patches.
He did. And so if you're not Googling him right now, number one, if you Google him right now, the first picture that's going to come up is him as an 87-year-old man. So you need specifically to look
him up on IMDb, and it'll show you this picture from The Haunting. Yes. That is so a cute. Smirk and a mustache, and you'll understand what we mean.
So ladies, watch this film.
You look at his other pictures on IMDb. Because he's got some intense photos here.
Here's hunky ones?
Him and Raquel Welch making out against a wall.
Lucky Raquel Welch. Well, so he apparently was offered the role of James Bond in Dr. No and turned it down.
Oh.
Which I can totally see because he has that same kind of glimmer.
He kind of has that James Bond thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's super handsome and British, and he has those great dimples, and then he just has this kind of twinkle in his eye. Like, even when he's being serious, you feel like there's this playfulness that would be enhanced by him taking his shirt off. So
he's smiling and unzipping a woman's dress in this picture.
Ow, Jill.
But still being classy. Somehow.
So, yes, very much enjoyed Richard Johnson's performance.
Yep.
So,
you want to talk about anybody else or just the two fellas?
No, I only wanted to. I don't even care about Russ Tamlin.
I wanted to talk about how Gideon's adorable, so it works out.
All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and dive in.
All right.
Spoilers.
So the movie starts out with this really cool shot of just like the house, and it's all dark against this like kind of backlit screen. And there's all this creepy music, and this voiceover comes on and talks about how some houses are just evil, and like whole speech about how evil is real and sometimes houses just kill people.
Yeah, and they lifted basically the opening paragraph from The Haunting of Hill House that describes like how long the house has stood. It stood for 90 years. It might stand for 90 more. And one of my favorite lines, which is, "Those who walk there walk alone."
Yeah.
And then he gives a quick overview of the history of the house, which is essentially this crazy guy named Hugh Crane built it. His wife was rounding the corner to see the house for the first time, and for no reason at all, her horses bolted and crashed into a tree, and she died. Like, literally
like
just outside
they
the
carried
house.
her dead body into the house so her daughter could say goodbye.
Yeah.
That was it. Like,
yep. So Hugh Crane has his little daughter, Abigail. She grows up in the house sometime when she's like a teenager, I guess. Hugh Crane goes on a trip to England and dies in a...
He drowns?
He drowns, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just Abigail by herself. She never moves out of her nursery. She grows up in it. She becomes an old woman.
She becomes bedridden, stays there.
And they did a pretty cool shot of kind of showing this woman growing up from, it was just a shot of her face in bed, and she transforms from a little girl through a series of like blends into a very elderly woman.
Yeah.
And she hires a young woman from the local village to be her caretaker. And when she needs something, she bangs on the wall with her cane to get the young woman's attention. And one night, the young caretaker woman is
off on the balcony getting some.
Yep. From a local stable boy or something.
Yeah, this is some like stable boy or farmhand or something.
Something like that. Something that immediately makes you think of The Princess Bride.
Yeah. Something that immediately is like, sure, she's meeting him on the veranda for a...
for a tryst.
Pretty sure that some woman has a romance novel about that.
Yeah, definitely. A bodice ripper. So old lady Abigail Crane dies, and the house passes to the caretaker, who I guess was written into the will. And she lives there totally alone, shunned by the townspeople because...
Everybody thinks she murdered her. And so they won't talk to her and shun her. So she's basically a shut-in in the house. The farm boy no more.
Shun. Shun. That's Charlie the Unicorn. So she goes crazy. She climbs up the spiral staircase in the library up in this little tower, and she hangs herself from a tall balcony.
And the camera scene for that was really cool because they don't show you like show her jump or anything. They don't have to. They just show like legs hanging. And it just worked really good. And the camera angle was so... I don't know, unsettling is the only word I can come up with, because it was like kind of a wide angle. And so the room looked sort of distorted, but you could just see these legs hanging there. And
they
used
used really weird lenses.
That like made everything look weird.
Yeah.
Which was so cool.
So the whole history of the Hill House sequence was awesome. It was narrated by Dr. Markway. The only part of it I didn't like was when they're talking about before Dr. Crane, or whatever, Mr. Crane dies, he remarried, and that his second wife died under mysterious circumstances too. And she's like standing at the top of the staircase and gets scared by something, and she gets like over scared. The woman's reaction made me laugh out loud.
Totally funny, but Also, again, amazing camera angle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't show her fall down the stairs, but it shows her, like, mangled at the bottom of the stairs. And she's, like, kind of laying upside down, and her face is staring into the camera in this way that is just, like, so haunting.
Yeah.
That
her dead face is haunting.
Her started out the movie so good for me.
Yeah. But her, like,
her
I'm about to get
scared
scared face was terrible. Yeah.
Oh. But a lot of them were in this movie.
Yes, lots of, like, dramaticness.
Yes.
So that's basically Dr. Markway explaining why he chose to have this experiment at Hill's house. Because of its history, it has him convinced that it's the first legitimate haunted house that he's encountered. So he goes and gets permission from the woman who inherited the house after the caretaker died. It passed to, like, a cousin wherever, and so he goes to meet that woman so that he can arrange to rent it for a few weeks. And she is concerned because he's proposing taking quote-unquote assistants, some of whom will be ladies, to the house.
Yeah, she's real concerned about a married man who's not taking his wife, which was a little weird, honestly. Like, she's like, well, you're taking your wife with you? And he was just like, nah.
The look on his face, too. Like, he, like, grinned slightly and was, like, all roguish. Well, why on earth would I take my wife?
Yeah, it was really, like, I got the impression he didn't really like his wife all that much. But he, like, plays it off and was just like, well, she doesn't believe, and so I don't want any non-believers there, so no, I'm not taking her. She doesn't want to come anyway.
Yeah.
Like, but so then it was just going to be him and these two women in the house, and the older woman, like we talked about, it was a proper time. She's like, you can't be alone with two unmarried women when you are a married man.
Which, to me, is confusing. Like, would it have been better if he were an unmarried man alone in the house with these women getting up to all kinds of shenanigans? I can't imagine it is. Yeah.
But it's like she's protecting his virtue. And so she insists that her nephew go along, who is set to inherit the house anyway and wants to check out what's coming his way.
Yep.
So
that's how Luke gets invited.
Yes. Which, why does it make it more proper to have a young single man?
That's what I mean. It makes
come along.
No sense. But maybe I just don't have any sense of propriety.
Safety in numbers, maybe.
So Dr. Markway has a study with all these names on a chalkboard, and he sends invitation letters to a bunch of different people who have had experiences with the abnormal or with the psychic in the past. And apparently only 2 of them agree to come to the house.
Well, and I think he says later more of them agree, but then don't actually come because they do research about the house and then change their minds.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame them.
Yeah. And the only reason that Eleanor, who goes by Nell, and Theo come is because they didn't look up anything.
Yeah.
And he's like, good, you came in blind. That's fantastic. And they're like, is it? Because he just told them that everybody else bailed because they were scared.
Yeah.
So.
Well, okay. And I know that this is a film review podcast and we're largely going to be focusing on the film, but I think we can't help but compare and contrast it to the book.
Yeah.
And
Which is why we read it. We wanted to know the differences.
So in the book, I honestly loved Eleanor's character in the beginning. We
differed.
Yeah? Oh, really? I identified with her a lot. The way that she responded to things were things the way that I could see realistically responding to things. And I fantasize and daydream a lot. At the beginning of the book, she just seemed like she'd had some kind of crappy circumstances in her life, but had, like, pulled through.
And I felt like she was a victim of her circumstances and had absolutely no idea how to deal with the world around her and lived in a fantasy land, and I was real concerned for her safety.
Well, I didn't... So I knew that she lived in a fantasy land, because as she's driving to Hill House, she's in her head the whole time, like, oh, what if I lived in that cottage over there? What would it be like to live there? I do that all the time.
And then goes off for, like, a good 45 minutes about living in this house she doesn't know anything about.
Uh-huh. Like, I took the train to meet you for dinner yesterday.
Yeah.
And we passed by my favorite apartment building downtown, and every time I'm on the train and I pass by that apartment building, I'm like, what would it be like to live there? I actually looked it up online, even though I adore my house and would certainly never trade it in for a freaking
building
condo.
Is this?
They, next to the Salt Lake Hardware building, where we used to park to the free parking when we'd go see movies at the Gateway, that big red Salt Lake Hardware building off North Temple.
Oh, yeah.
So to the north of that, they've constructed a couple of big apartment buildings called the Hardware Apartments. And they are so cool looking. And I love the way that they were designed because they built like 2 long apartment buildings and then they put a parking structure between them. So there's actually enough parking for all the residents, which is kind of
rare. Yeah.
That's unique in Salt Lake City. And then I looked up pictures online, and the insides are so pretty, and they have spiral staircases and stuff.
Oh,
so,
you have to show me later.
Yeah, so they're pretty cool. So I identified with that part of Eleanor. But once she gets with other people who aren't her family, that's when her true stunted nature comes out.
Yeah.
And you start realizing she has no social skills. She has never interacted with a man before.
Yeah. Well, and I guess in the beginning of the book, I just felt bad for her. I didn't identify with her, but I've never really been as, like, imagination-based as you are. Like, you love the fantasy stuff, and I am not quite that way. If that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. Because with you, I played sports, and with your sister, I played imagination games.
Yes, which is how I roll. So, like, you know, we'd throw rotten apples across the street to each other.
And with Tiffany, I'd play, let's interview the garbage man and pretend that we own a newspaper and we're doing a feature on it.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, just different things. But, so yeah, she was kind of hard for me in the beginning because I was like, focus, woman. Like, what is your deal?
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to go places. Pay attention. Like, I don't know. I was having a hard time with her.
You just wanted her to get there.
Yes.
And
all
she was
of her,
enjoying the journey.
like, inner monologues. I was like, oh, go. Here we go again.
Well, okay. So Jill disliked her off the bat. I liked Eleanor in the beginning of the book. In the movie, 2 seconds of Eleanor on screen and I already hated her.
Yeah.
She was so prickly and argumentative and just no fuse at all. She just felt unhinged from the very start. And she's arguing with her sister, and who I presume is her sister's husband, about, I want to take the car on the trip. It's half mine. I helped pay for it. You drive it all the time. I want to take it. They disagree. She ends up stealing the car.
Yeah. Well, and that whole interaction, so it happened in the book, too. It was almost word for word the book. Like, her sister was like, I don't want you to take it. We want to use the car. What are we going to do if you take the car? And she was like, well, the car's half mine and I never take it. I should get to take it.
She kept saying, I mean to take it.
Yeah. And her sister was just like, but we don't trust you to take the car and bring it back safely. Like, there was all kinds of emotional abuse happening. And you could just tell from the get-go that she was never treated well her entire life. And nobody thinks that she's capable of taking care of herself. And then she proves them right.
Yeah.
But she, like, stands up for herself, kind of, but really just kind of throws a tantrum. And so that's exactly what happened. I think that's where I had a hard time with it, is I was like she was like in her head, like, well, I'm just going to tell him that I want it. And then she'd be like, but I want to take the car. So I think that's where I had a hard time, was like, she, from the very get-go, was like throwing tantrums. But then I thought it was cool that she did what she wanted to do anyway. Like, she stole the car anyway. And it was like, she didn't really steal it. It's her car.
Yeah,
and so I was kind of like, good job, kiddo. But I don't know.
So Eleanor steals the car so that she can drive from Boston to whatever unnamed little mountains this hill house is in.
Which, by the way, I looked it up. They never say, they specifically don't identify where.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Yeah. They're just like some house in somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the way, she fantasizes about living in like a house that has 2 stone lions guarding the gate and just stopping anywhere. And she definitely, now that she's out on her own, she's like, I'm never going back.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what happens. I'm never going back.
Yeah, she basically is just like, I'm out now. I don't have to listen to anyone, and I'm never going to go back. Which I found incredibly unstable, because why, like, you're a grown woman. Why didn't you move out years ago?
Well,
I mean, she's been taking care of her mother, and her mother recently passed away.
Like
and she
2 months prior.
No idea what to do with her life now,
which is
she's not taking care of her mother.
Yeah, that's why she's so stunted, because she's never been her own person.
No.
She's always been her mother's caretaker, and now she's trying to find her place in the world.
Yes, which completely makes sense. But I don't know. I guess I'm one of those your life is what you make it kind of people.
Oh, totally.
So
no, she's super grating.
Yeah.
But
real whiny.
But I still identified with it because every once in a while when life gets like too stressful, especially when I was in my 20s,
yeah,
I would be like, we'll just run away. Like, we'll just like pack a couple suitcases and then we'll live a new life and we'll live in Iowa. I don't know. Like, we'll just go somewhere, like start new. And so I identified with that adventurous part of it because I think it would be like, let's just pack up this life that's not working and go. And, yeah, exactly.
I've always loved that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel and I talk about it all the time, moving to the Oregon coast and living in a treehouse and opening a bakery. Why not?
If she serves those lemon tarts, you'll be successful.
Oh,
and your cakes. Your cakes are so beautiful too.
And she bakes amazing things. Mm-hmm. And
I'm in favor of this plan. I would visit your treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
So Eleanor gets to Hill House and the gate is locked. And she immediately turns into a bully when the groundskeeper gets there.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Like, the groundskeeper won't let her in, and she's like, I was invited. I deserve to be here. Open this gate.
Yeah.
And then he's like, you don't want to come in? Like, you have no idea what you're getting yourself in for. And then he starts opening the gate, and she drives her car at him, and then stops the car and laughs at him and was like, who's scared now, punk? And then he comes up and he gets kind of mad at her, and she's genuinely, like, shocked that he's fighting back. And I'm like, you just tried to run him over with your car.
Yeah, she can dish it out, but she can't take it.
Yeah. So I immediately dislike this girl.
She's not great. Probably my favorite scene in this version, the 1999 version, and the book.
Thank you. It is mine as well. I know exactly where this is going.
Please take us there.
Michelle and I quote this every time one of us leaves the house and it's dark outside. Just for the record, Diana and I also used to use this line all the time. So Eleanor gets to the house and there's the caretaker who she tried to run down with her car. And his wife is in the house and she is like a prickly, no-nonsense woman.
Mrs. Dudley. So she takes Eleanor to her room and starts giving her the rundown. She's like, I set out breakfast at 9. I clean up at 10. Dinner's on the table at 6. I clean up at 7. Like, boom. And she's like, we don't stay after dark. There's no one to hear you scream. She's like, no one from town will come. She's like, no one will come any further than that in the night. In the dark. Like, she has this speech planned because a few minutes later, Theo shows up and she says the exact same thing. And the whole time, Eleanor and Theo are just talking and she's standing in the corner giving her speech. Like, she has no cares that they're not listening to her. But it's this constant, like, no one will come any further than that in the night, in the dark. It's so, every version of this movie, including the book, it is perfect and I love it. And you should say it to every single person who leaves your house at night. It's requisite.
No one will hear you scream.
In the night. So good. And the lady that played Mrs. Dudley, she did this really nice kind of weird grin at Eleanor and at Theo too. Yeah. She delivers her little speech.
Like, she's real proud of this speech. She's been practicing it. She nailed it and she's glad.
She's super weird.
And like later in the film, Eleanor's like freaking out about something and she comes in, she's trying to give some speech about cleaning up dinner and Dr. Smolder's like, what's her name again?
Mrs. Dudley.
Mrs. Dudley, please! She's just off in the corner giving some speech about, I clean up dinner promptly at 7, and I won't come any further than that in the night, in the dark. And he's just like, shut it!
She's like a little wind-up doll. She's got like a couple things she says, and that's it.
That's it. She's like a character in a video game, and you have to say the right thing, or else they'll just keep repeating themselves.
Yeah, and God forbid you hit the B button or the owl is going to make the whole big speech again. You're just trying to get to Hyrule Castle.
Exactly.
So as Jill mentioned, Theo gets there. She gets the same creepy speech from Mrs. Dudley. And the two of them, Theo and Eleanor, kind of become like fast but awkward friends.
Super fast. Well, and Eleanor, like, is being her awkward self, and Theo immediately is like, why don't we go check out the house? Why don't you put on some of the new clothes you bought? And Eleanor's like, how did you know I bought new clothes? And she's like, I can read you like a book. It's written all over your face. And Eleanor's just like, okay. And you can tell it makes her a little uncomfortable, but Theo's just like, I'm going to like this girl.
Yeah. And she calls her Nell right away.
Away. And she's like, how did you know that was my nickname? And she's like, well, that's the nickname for Eleanor. So of course I'm going to call you Nell.
Yeah.
Like,
so Theo covers it pretty well. And I don't know if her explanations are for Eleanor's benefit or for her own benefit. Like, does she not know that she has psychic gifts, or...
She might just be used to hiding things about herself.
That's very true. That is a very good point. So, because this movie came out in 1963, and the character Theo is lesbian, and the director cut out a scene early in the film that gives some background into that part of Theodora's life because they were worried about the censors, and the censors were really strict and said Theodora can never, like, touch Nell unnecessarily. Like, they didn't want the audience figuring out that Theo was gay.
Yeah.
So,
which, I have to be honest, only because we just read the books and I had read the movie trivia that talked about it. The only reason I know. I've seen this movie several times, never thought anything of it.
Yeah, the censors got their way, basically.
Yeah, there's a line later where they're fighting, and Eleanor says, some things just shouldn't occur in nature, like you. Yeah. And I always assumed she meant, like, her ESP abilities, and I never...
Yeah, I think she was being cruel.
Yeah, never, ever picked up on the fact that she was gay. But this time watching it, because I was looking for it, I was like, oh, yeah.
Well, and I think if you hadn't read the trivia or the book, you wouldn't have known. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's just not super out there, and I don't think you were looking for it. You know, like, relationships like that weren't portrayed as openly in the media.
Oh, not at all.
And so it's just not something, I mean, you're just like, oh, yeah, they're friends, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, they kind of make jokes about it on a couple TVs, like, my grandma and her special friend Maureen or whatever, like, and then they go, oh, wait a second. Like, yeah. It's just things that people didn't think about at that time.
Yeah, but I think you're totally right. I think Theo is used to keeping it close to the vest and hiding all kinds of aspects of her life from people. So she really smoothly kind of covers everything up before too many questions can come out.
And she immediately is definitely the character that I identify with and like more.
Yeah.
Because she just walks in and she's cool as a cucumber, and she's just like, hey, we're going to be best friends. Let's go check out this house. Like, this is going to be great. It's going to be so much fun. And she's looking at it more as just like sure, I'm here, whatever. But yet also like, this house is creepy. You know that, right? Like, she's kind of more the practical, like, this could be fun, but this is also crazy. Like, and in the book, she was a little more abrasive, and I didn't like her as much, but in the movie, she was a little more carefree.
And in both, she uses sarcasm and wit to cover up when she's scared or when she's uncomfortable.
Which, weirdly, I identify with.
I know. Who would guess?
Who knew?
So, they go exploring the house, and they become immediately lost and upset. And it goes from, like, a fun, happy scene in the bedrooms of, like, let's go explore the house together, cut to them, like, bickering in a hall because they have no idea where they are.
Yeah. And, like, real upset about being lost. Well, and I think they get scared because they enter, like, a cold spot, which Theo immediately reads as a bad thing. Like, she's like, the house doesn't want us here. We have to get out. Like, it's real uncomfortable real quick.
Luckily, right after that, they run into Dr. Smulders.
Yes.
And Luke in the dining room.
He, like, gallantly opens the door and saves them from being lost and stands there all tall, dark, and handsome. And he's like, hello, ladies. And they're like hi.
Well, Eleanor especially right away is
Eleanor,
like, oh, hello.
It's like when Donald Duck sees Daisy Duck and the eyes turn into hearts and beat out of his head. It was a little like that. Just saying.
Yeah. And that was one of the changes that they made from the book that I really liked.
In the book, she's sort of interested in Luke.
Mm-hmm. Oh, she's totally in love with Luke.
And Luke has no cares.
Yeah.
He has no idea even, I would say. Like,
I think he pities her.
Yes.
And so he would almost flirt with her back.
Yeah.
But in the film version, Dr. Hottie is the hot guy. And so you're like, of course Eleanor is in love with Dr.
And then
Sexy Pants.
Dr. McSmolder totally eggs it on.
Oh, he flirts shamelessly.
And wants her to have feelings for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, constantly. Oh, you look very pretty today.
The amount of, like, over-the-top flattery. Yeah.
He is a piece of work. So...
which is tough because you're like, you're super hot, but you're flirting with this woman, and we know that you're married from a prior conversation, and so that sucks.
It was really uncomfortable. Yeah, like, as the audience, it was so uncomfortable because you were like, Nell is super falling in love with this guy, and he has a wife that he has some sort of weird relationship with, and I don't know what it is.
Yes.
So that was a level of uncomfortable I wasn't expecting.
But they kind of undercut the tension with Luke, who they gave all the best lines to. His dialogue was pretty consistently hilarious. And
he, of course, is my perfect man because he walks in and he's all sarcastic and ridiculous and...
drunk.
Yeah. You know how I like him sloppy drunk.
He wasn't drunk, but he makes a bunch of jokes about,
he makes a bunch of jokes about booze.
Yeah, like I majored in drinking in college and stuff like that. So he's definitely what they might have called the card back then. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Which I love in a man. So... and he immediately gets flirty with the girls, too. Mm. Like, he's like, hey, this weekend's not going to be so bad. Like, he's like... And they, like, all break off to go to bed. Mm-hmm. And he's like, are these girl ghosts or boy ghosts? Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
it's going to be in my room with me tonight.
Yeah. But before they break off to go to bed, when they all meet, they sit down to have dinner. And I loved the filming of this scene so much because they had this mirror sitting above a fireplace next to the table. And it was angled in such a way that everyone looked slightly distorted in the mirror. And it was showing you an angle of the room that the camera wasn't. And so the whole time you're like, oh my gosh, it's showing me stuff in the mirror.
Yeah,
like,
you're watching
is something going to happen? Like, and it just made you so uncomfortable. Corinne and I have talked before about our fear of mirrors. And this movie played off that hard.
And
like,
they weren't
there was
normal
a lot,
mirrors either.
No, they were all weird mirrors that gave weird reflections and made you really uncomfortable.
They look like they had like spots in them.
Yeah. Like old mirrors get those black spots. It was like that. And so... because the house was 90 years old and they're probably original mirrors. So it makes sense. Yeah. But it like added a level of uncomfortable in almost every scene. There was a mirror. And I noticed the one in the kitchen and then I started watching for him. And they were seriously in every scene. There was some sort of awkward mirror angle that showed you an angle that the camera couldn't or wouldn't. And it just made you like... uncomfortable, and I loved it. Like you were like waiting for something weird in the mirror, and I thought it was so genius.
And it added to the fun house feeling of the house. Yeah.
It made everything feel out of whack, and I loved it.
And I read that they built the sets of the interior of the house. They like built them on sound stages and stuff. So whoever designed them is a genius.
So the house itself, the exterior was in Stratford-upon-Avon, which... they're not going to go film a movie in England, even though half the cast was British.
Actually, I think they did film the movie in England. And that's why half the cast was British, because there was some type of like requirement to be made over there.
So like soundstage in London. Or,
yeah, probably.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. All right.
So they all go to bed, and Eleanor is asleep, and she hears pounding on the wall. And she thinks it's her mother.
Immediately, she's like, okay, Mom, I'm coming. And, like, pounds back.
Yeah. But the pounding continues, and it's super loud. And she hears Theo screaming for her in the next bedroom.
And they have, like, adjoining bedrooms. So there's, like, just a door she has to run through.
Mm-hmm. So she dashes in there and jumps into Theo's bed. And there's something banging on the walls and on the doors. And, like, twisting at the doorknob. And there's some type of force that's trying to get into the room, and they feel very cold. and it's very creepy.
Very, very creepy. And the pounding happens, and they do this thing where they zoom the camera in on the cracks of the door, and it sounds like scratching almost around the door, and it just kind of spun around the cracks of the door, and it was so creepy.
And we haven't really talked about the decor of the house yet.
Oh, that's true.
Which, during this scene, there's lots of, like, quick zooms and weird angles on the strange decorations in the house. It's very gaudily decorated. There's carved everything. Jill and I talked all the time about things that shouldn't have faces.
Yes.
Like, you basically shouldn't use faces to decorate your house, and they have creepy cherubs looking down at you. And
gargoyles in the bedroom. Like, I think Theo comments on, sure, why isn't there a gargoyle in the parlor?
Yes. So pretty effective scene of there's something here. We don't know what it is, and it's trying to get in. Mm-hmm. Super scary.
Very creepy. I would also like to point out that Theo was in full makeup with winged eyeliner while sleeping. Just FYI.
You don't sleep in your eyeliner? Yesterday's eyeliner could be today's smoky eye if you just believe.
You know, only when I get home and I'm real tired. I'm usually really good about washing my face because otherwise I wake up and my eyes are all crusty and gross.
So Eleanor eventually gets irritated and just can't handle it. She has a fairly low threshold for weirdness, and so she gets up and starts banging on the door and screaming for the thing to leave her alone, and then is immediately regretful, like, oh no, now they know that I'm in here.
And I think we need to talk about how she's having an inner monologue the whole time.
Yeah.
About, like, I caused this, the house wants me, I shouldn't have knocked back, now they know I'm in here. Like, the house knows where I am, why would I, like, I did this, I brought this upon everything, like, taking full blame for the craziness that's happening. And slowly descending into madness. Mm-hmm. You can tell she's starting to go crazy.
Yeah, she's Blanche Dubois hard. So the bedroom door opens, and on the other side of it are Dr. Markway and Luke, who had been tricked into leaving the house by following a non-existent spectral dog. Yeah. There was a dog in the house, they chased it outside, and then it disappeared. So Dr. Markway immediately decides, okay, obviously something in the house was trying to separate us so that it could attack the girls. So they decide that they won't be separated anymore.
Yeah.
But then they immediately break that the next morning by everyone walking into the breakfast parlor at different times.
Yeah. So Dr. McHandsome, sorry, apparently I watched Grey's Anatomy, Dr. Smolder, is sitting at the breakfast table, and Nell walks in, and they start having breakfast, and he immediately was like, do you want coffee or tea? And, like, pours her a cup of tea, and she is just googly eyeing him hard, and he is smoldering like crazy, and he walks in, and he's like, I think that this house agrees with you. You look stunning. And
yeah, he's like, how do you manage to look so beautiful after a night like last night?
Yeah, like, he is laying it on real thick. Mm-hmm. He is not... Anyway, it was gross. So...
but also hot.
But also attractive. Yeah. Also, you were like, I kind of want to be Nell. So they sit down to breakfast, and they have this whole conversation where he's asking her about herself. Like, he's like, I want to know all about you. Tell me about you. Which I found was so interesting because in the book, she's having a conversation with Luke, and she's like, I just want him to, like, want to get to know me. And I wish he'd ask me a question about myself because then I'd know he was interested. And, like, this whole inner monologue that was so needy and awful to listen to that this, like, he immediately sits her down and is like, tell me about you. I just want to know about you. And it was like, she tells him that she's really good at playing cards, and I can't remember, like, weird little things about herself. And then she's like, and I prefer to sleep on my left side, and just drops it on the table. You know those people who say something and you're like, they want me to ask about that, but you kind of know you shouldn't because it's going to get weird.
And you almost want to not ask to spite them.
But you kind of have to. So he asks, he's like, why do you sleep on your left side? And she's like, well, I read somewhere it makes your heart stop faster. And he's like, okay.
And then she just randomly drops that, like, well, I think he asks her after that.
Oh, he asks her how she thinks of the house.
Oh, yeah.
He asked her what she thinks of the house, and he's like, he's like, I think you're enchanted by the house. And she's like, not only the house. And like gazing into his eyes. And he kind of looks at her and you can tell he's a little like, oops. Yeah, well, I'm going with it. Like, he totally doesn't care. You can tell like there's like a second of panic in his face. And then he's just like, yeah, well.
Well, might as well take this thing all the way home then.
Might as well see what happens.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah.
He asks her what she's most afraid of, too, and she says something kind of sad. She says she's most afraid of being alone and being left out.
Yeah.
And that's something that a kid would say.
Yes.
And then Luke walks in, or Theo walks in, and they ask her what she's most afraid of.
She's most afraid of admitting what she really wants.
Yeah.
Which, another nod to telling people that she is a lesbian.
Yeah, not being able to live openly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was very sad. It was very somber.
Yeah, both her fear and Eleanor's fears are like, well, those are heavy. And then Luke walks in and is like making a joke about how could you not be afraid? There's like all this weird writing on the wall outside.
Yeah. They're like, Luke, what are you afraid of? He's like, what I just walked past in the hallway. And they're like, what did you just walk past in the hallway? And he's like, come here, I'll show you. And they go in the hallway and somebody has written in chalk, help Eleanor come home.
Mm-hmm.
And she immediately loses her friggin' mind, like in a way that made zero sense to me as a human being.
Yeah.
Why is that my name? Why my name? Like, she is very upset that the house knows her name. And Theo's like, it knows all of our names.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're here, we talk to each other, like, it knows us all. But she's like, why me? And she just can't cope. And this is when the caretaker lady comes in and starts giving her speech about cleaning up breakfast. And Dr. Smolder's like, shut it! Because she's like losing her mind about the chalk on the wall.
And Mrs. Dudley, who cannot read a room.
Right. She's just like, I gots to clean up breakfast.
Yeah, because I need to get away from this spooky ass
I know
house.
this woman is having a mental breakdown. I got stuff to do.
So, yeah, because Eleanor has no fuse. So the smallest thing just makes her go totally berserk.
She goes from 0 to 1,000 in like point nothing.
Yeah. So she's demanding to know if Theo wrote the stuff on the chalk. Theo's insinuating that maybe Eleanor wrote it herself.
She like
for
calms
attention.
down for a second. She's like, Theo, I promise I won't be mad. Just tell me that you did it. And Theo's like, no. None of us did it. Clearly it was the house.
Yeah. So after Eleanor's little freak out, they go on a tour of the house, during which she is surprisingly calm. And they find I don't know what you would call it, the conservatory? Like the greenhouse thing?
And the whole time they're on the tour, Dr. Smolder keeps saying, call me John. And like telling her you fit in the house. You're beautiful, just like the house.
Yes.
Like it's real bad.
So they get into this part of the house. It's like, I keep wanting to call it the conservatory because to me it looks like the room on Clue that like...
I think it's a conservatory.
Yeah, it has like glass walls.
Glass walls full of plants.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely...
Or a solarium or something.
Conservatory with a secret passageway to the library.
Definitely.
You may have not seen a murderer in. I don't know.
So there's this creepy statue in the middle of the room, and it's of like a Greek god surrounded by other figures. Like a few women and a little girl and a dog. And
oh no, it's totally Hugh Crane.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, so they weren't just joking when they said it was autobiographical.
No. I think it's absolutely Hugh Crane. I don't know, I could be wrong. But...
Well, that would make sense because Luke comments, I don't know where this statue came from. It was not on the original inventory.
Yeah.
So I could see Hugh Crane making a statue version of himself that looks like a Greek god. Like,
oh yeah. Like he's very statuesque and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they start making jokes.
The statue's statuesque. Sorry, I just heard what I just said. Oh boy.
It is late. We need our thesauruses handy. So yeah, they crack jokes. Luke says that one of the ugly statue women looks like Nell.
Yeah.
And then the doctor agrees with him. Which was very confusing.
No. Well, he's like, Nell, I think this one's you. It looks like a caretaker, whatever. And the doctor's like, yeah, except Nell's more beautiful.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. He does turn it into another compliment about Nell.
Yeah, and her beauty. You kind of get the impression that he can tell how insecure she is, and he's laying it on thick to try and, like, build her up a little bit. Maybe that was me thinking on the bright side of life.
You're looking for the best because you are deeply, deeply attracted to him.
Well, and I just look for the best in people, but I was hoping, because he's such a nice guy.
Yeah.
Like, he just was like, hey, who's in need of a self-esteem? That girl.
I am all in favor of spinning this not as being someone who's just... And maybe he's just a super flirt.
There was definite moments where I was like, creepo, but I felt like at the beginning anyway, when he was calling her beautiful, I was like, aw, he just thinks she needs to hear that.
But then again, and
then it just kept happening, and it got worse and worse to the point where I was like, nope.
And meanwhile, Theo is telling Luke, oh, you're the dog.
Yeah. So great.
So after the house tour, they
like tease her about dancing with Crane.
Oh yeah, and
so Nell does this weird dance around the statue,
and she starts singing this song that I think if it was on a soundtrack, it would be called Nell's Theme, because it comes up all the time when she's having her, delirious moments. And to me, it sounded like if "You Are My Sunshine" was a dirge. So when I was feeding the cats, I kept singing "You Are My Sunshine" because this movie put a weird version of it in my head. So that's what she's humming from out of nowhere as she's like pretending to dance with Hugh Crane. So it's weird because sometimes she's pretty pliable and goes along with the flow and she jokes around with them, and then just like that, she is freaking out and angry at everyone and so prickly.
Real unstable.
So the tour continues onto the library, and Nell almost crosses the threshold and then says, I cannot go in there. That smell. I can't go in there. It's like Mother's sick room. And
she does not say that. She just says, I can't go in there because of the smell.
Oh, yeah.
And Dr. Smolder's like, what smell? I don't smell anything. And she's like, I just can't. And he's like, don't worry, darling. You stay out here in the hall. I don't want you to do anything that upsets you. Stay here where you're safe.
Yeah.
And they all wander into the library. And Russ Tamblyn, the dancer, immediately gets up he's like, I'm going to turn this into a club. He's like, I'm going to have can dancers coming down this rickety spiral staircase that is screwed into the wall. So he gets up the staircase and starts pretending to dance down it. And it immediately starts to come out of the wall. And he, instead of walking down the rest of the stairs, just jumps. Yeah. Like halfway down the staircase, and they're all like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Maybe. And he's just like, yeah, whatever. Just jump 10 feet. What? NBD.
Because he's...
But,
like a cat.
Yeah, and they talk about how he was a good person to bring to the house because he has a strong sense of survival. And he, like, stands up and he's like, it's just my strong sense of survival. Like, he was a part of this conversation that was not had in his presence.
That's a good point. I didn't even catch that.
It made me laugh really hard. But he said it adorably, so I ate it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So while he's doing backflips off of the spiral staircase, Nell is outside on the veranda, leaning over the veranda wall at
she's trying to see
angle.
The tower.
Yeah. The top of the tower. And she's thinking about how, through those windows right there, that's where the caretaker looked outside for the last time before throwing herself over the rail. She's very morbid.
Yeah. And she's like, how great would that be? She was with the house forever. Like, she wants to be part of the house. So she leans back, and she's leaning so far over the rail. To be honest, there's no way she could have fallen, but that's not the point. So she's leaning all the way over the rail. And Dr. Smolder comes up and he's like, Nell! And like grabs her and holds her.
Like full body embrace.
Full body, like, I just saved your life. And the whole time I'm like, she was nowhere close to falling. Like, the wall around the balcony she was on, it was probably went up to her mid-back. And then she was bending over it. Like, there was no way she could fall unless she like jumped and did a backflip over it. But he was very concerned because his precious Eleanor almost fell, air quotes. So he grabs her and he's like holding her in this tender embrace. And he's like, oh, I was just so worried about you. And please don't do that again. And she's like, okay.
And Theo and Luke come outside and catch them in this kind of embarrassing,
loving embrace.
And Dr. Markway explains, oh, she just got dizzy. And Luke says, dizzy like a fox.
Yeah. And I love that he just points out, like, let's not pretend this was an accident.
That's what I mean. So, he got some fabulous lines.
He absolutely did. I wrote a few down later, too. So then Dr. Smolder's like, she can't be alone. Theo, you have to move into her room. You have to share a room with her. Mm-hmm. Like, this huge thing happened. And, like, this is where they start just treating her like a straight-up hysterical woman who can't make any life choices. And I'm like, literally nothing happened. Why are you not letting her be alone right now? Like, it seemed way too overprotective, which then just made Nell love him more. Because,
definitely.
Oh, he just wants me to be safe.
Yeah, because she just wants to be cherished. Like, she uses that word a couple of times. And so his desire to protect her plays right into that.
Absolutely.
And she's got this kind of weird mix of instincts, because when she's looking at the house, she thinks words like vile and hideous, but then she's also completely enamored with the house.
Yeah, it's really weird.
So I think she's got kind of the same thing going on with the doctor. Like, her emotions are all the things that she's becoming attached to kind of strangely.
Mm-hmm. And she's, like, way too attached to the people. Mm-hmm. Like, Theo and the doctor. Like, she's just weirdly attaching herself to people and things, and she's just not used to all of this.
Yeah.
So she and Theo start sharing a room, and as discussed on the Gross Teeth movie podcast, I love nightgowns.
Gross Teeth movie podcast. That was Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
That one. So they all are, like, in their cute nightgowns. There's a great scene later with Nell in her nightgown. We'll get there. But so they're like, they're drinking like there's no tomorrow. And that's what this situation needs, is unstable Eleanor on booze. So,
and she doesn't even know what she's drinking. She's like, I hate whiskey. And Theo's like, this is brandy.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, okay. And she's already, like, sloshed at that point. And she's painting her toenails and talking about how it tickles. And she's never had her toenails painted before. And Theo's kind of looking at her and rolling her eyes like, how are you a person?
But I think Theo kind of likes it.
I think she does,
when I get done with you, you'll be a whole different person. Mm-hmm. And she comments a few minutes later about how she furnished her whole apartment with her she doesn't call her her partner, but she says, we furnished our apartment with things we found at junk shops, and I love taking old things and making them new again. Yes. And Nell's like me, ha 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 ha. But it's incredibly accurate.
And Theo looks at her like, uh-huh. And we should probably mention that Theo definitely has moments of jealousy every time Dr. Smolder's in the room. Like, yes. She definitely gets angry and, like, pulls Nell away from it.
Yeah, she gets really cranky anytime Dr. Markway is, like, affectionate towards Nell, or Nell is the center of attention. Mm-hmm. And Nell starts telling some fibs, because she is listening to Theo talk about her great apartment, and Theo asks where Nell lives, and Nell fabricates a little apartment all her own with little stone lions on the mantle, kind of like mixing together Theo's life with the fantasy life that Nell was thinking about when she was driving to the house. And as they are, getting comfortable for bed, once again, Nell's, like, quick fuse comes to light, and she and Theo start bickering, like, immediately.
And I don't even remember what it was, but all of a sudden she was just like, I said good day!
Yeah.
And, like, goes to bed.
Yeah, it's just like, turn out the light. You go to sleep now. And Theo's like, why are you so mad at me? I don't think you killed your mother.
Yeah.
And Nell's just like,
like, my sister, when we were growing up, used to say, good night means be quiet, so good night! Because otherwise I would jabber at her all night long. So it made me think of that when she was just like, good night! And, like, rolls over. I wanted to say, good night means be quiet, so good night!
I remember that from having sleepovers. Like, we would be laying in bed in the dark and just talking forever about nonsense.
Yep.
And I got to experience that as a full-grown adult woman at a writing retreat last year. There were 3 of us sharing a king-size bed. And the same, like, we're all in our 30s, like, laying in bed with the covers up to our chins, like, talking with the lights out.
I love it. It's the best part of, like, sharing a room with someone is just talking to them into all hours of the night.
Yes.
So, yeah, she loses her crap about something. I don't even remember what it is. And, like, rolls over and she's like, good night. And then the doctor pulls them out of bed and he's like, come with me, I have to show you something. And takes them to the nursery. And he's like, I think I found the heart of Hill House. Mm-hmm. And it's like right outside the nursery and it's just a really cold spot. And Theo's just like, I hate it, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And Luke is like, there's a draft. There has to be a draft. The doctor's like, from what? The doors that won't open?
And the super solid floor?
Yeah, and the super solid floor. And, like, Luke is, like, trying, like, knocking on everything, like, trying to find the draft. And there's a really cool part where he breathes into the cold spot and you can, like, see his breath.
Yeah, I was wondering how they achieved that.
I wondered that, too. It had to have been a special effect of some kind.
Yeah, I think that they used to actually draw on the film, even.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But it looked really cool. And the girls immediately were like, this is creepy. We're going to bed.
Oh, and Luke wants to open the door to the nursery and see inside. And Dr. Montague's like, no, let's keep the lid on the... Or not Montague, that's the name in the book. Dr. Markway is like, let's keep the lid on the pressure cooker a little while longer.
Yeah.
So he leaves the door locked.
Yes. And they all go back to bed. And then it shows Nell laying in bed, and it's zoomed in on her face. So you don't see anything but her face, and you start hearing the, like, pounding again. Mm-hmm. And she's like, Theo, what do we do? You know? And it gets loud, and it's, like, scaring her. And so she reaches out, and she's like, Theo, hold my hand. And, like, you never hear Theo, which is weird, but you're just hearing, like, the scary noises and Nell's
it's like
face.
A man talking.
And, yeah, you can hear, like, a man voice and a woman laughing.
Yeah.
And then a baby crying, like a child crying. And she's like, I will not let this house harm a child. And she gets, like, all angry. And she keeps saying, like, Theo, you're squeezing my hand too hard.
Yeah.
You're going to break my hand.
And in between the shots of her face, they're showing a patch of wall where the kind of like vine, kind of floral design is intertwining together. And they did another cool effect where they made good use of some dissolves and they showed an angry face, like a pair of angry eyes and a scary mouth taking shape in these creepy vines.
Yes. And it was really cool.
It was really well done. Yeah. Because every single room in the house is wallpapered or painted or carved with strange patterns that I kept being nervous were going to move.
Yeah. Like the 90s one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It, like, zooms back in and she's like, you're squeezing my hand too hard. And she starts freaking out. I won't let this house harm a child. And she just yells, stop it right now. And everything stops. And she sits up in bed, but she's not in bed. She's on, like, the couch in their bedroom. And she looks across the room and Theo's in bed across the room. And she looks down and I love how she did this. She had her hand like if she were holding hands with someone. Yeah. And she looked down at her hand like open and was just like horrified. Yeah. And starts screaming, whose hand was I holding?
Which would freak the crap out of me. That's for damn sure.
Such a good creepy scene. That was one of those like really unsettling moments for me.
Yeah.
And Theo's just looking at her like horrified.
Mm-hmm. And the next day, she's talking to Dr. Markway about the experience in the music room, but he is kind of more interested in this harp that was playing itself.
Yeah, so she walks in and they're alone again, and he immediately is like, hello, beautiful, and like comes over to talk to her, and they have a moment on the couch. Like, they're sitting, it's like 2 couches back to back. So they're like sitting very near each other with their arms up on the backs of the couches and their faces are really close, but they're not sitting next to each other. Like the backs of the couches are between them. And they have this really like heart to heart is really the best word I can say. And he tells her about how he's really interested in the paranormal because he thinks it's just science we don't understand yet, and that's why we're afraid. And so he talks about how even 50 years ago, they didn't understand how magnets worked, and so they thought it was magic. But now they understand it's just science, and you had to understand how it worked. And so he wanted to do this so he could understand it, so he wouldn't be scared anymore.
He was comparing the supernatural to the preternatural.
Yeah, and he's like telling her all about like how he feels, and they're bonding, they're having a moment, and then the harp starts playing itself, and he's just like, all right, and he's done. And she's just sitting there like, oh. And there was definitely like a lingering moment where they were like, she was giving him the kiss me eyes, and then he hears the harp and is just like, peace out, and like just walks away.
It was one of those almost moments, you know? Like in The Office before Jim and Pam get together and they're like almost get together, or they almost profess their feelings for each other or something. Oh, and in this scene, she shares a little bit more about her background and explains that her mother would bang on the wall when she needed help, which we as the viewer recognize as exactly what Abigail Crane did to her caretaker. Mm-hmm. And that one night, you know, she was banging and Eleanor didn't wake up.
And she's like, I was so tired and I didn't go to her. And then she died and it's all my fault. And I think that was when they shared the moment, because he was like, no, Eleanor, it was not your fault. Like, you were exhausted. You were 11 years of caring for your mom exhausted, which is a level of exhaustion I can't even imagine. And like this whole big deal. And that's when he gets up and leaves her, I think. Like she like bears her soul and he's like, no, you didn't kill your mom. What was that?
Yeah, exactly. So they don't get to have the moment that she was hoping for. Well, and during that almost moment, I felt like they were inches away from maybe kissing or something. And then he was about to say, Eleanor, this can't happen because, and then the harp started playing and he was distracted. So 10 seconds later, the because that was so unspoken pulls up to the house in a taxi cab, and it's Dr. Markway's wife. And she's there to hang out and put a stop to all this nonsense. And I will admit, this is one of the changes that I was kind of bummed out by. I see why they did this, because it fit much better with the film storyline where Eleanor is in love with Dr. Markway and he's flirting with her back. But the book, Mrs. Montague, is amazing. And I had been looking forward to seeing her portrayed on screen.
She was hysterical.
She is like a paranormal junkie. She is super into automatic writing, which she calls planchette. And she's like, she just cannot wait to get to Hill House. And she is also super critical of her husband and is basically like, now that I'm here, you've been doing everything wrong. And I can't believe how disorganized you've been. We're going to do planchette and get to the bottom of it.
I don't understand why she wasn't there in the first place.
Because she had a yoga class that she couldn't miss.
Right.
Yes.
We can't talk about her without talking about her special friend, Arthur.
Oh my gosh. And her special, in the book, she carts this fellow Arthur who's like, he's just such a boob.
He's a bumbling idiot. But the whole time you're like, why does she have this companion named Arthur?
What's their relationship?
Who, she spends way more time with than her husband.
Yes.
It kind of would have fit better in the movie, because then maybe you would have felt weird about Dr. Smolder and Nell, but nope.
So in the film, Mrs. Markway shows up and she's like, hello, I'm Mrs. Markway. I'm very loving. I'm very supportive of my husband. I'm here to prove that, or no, she's upset because her husband's always kind of running off and doing these paranormal investigations. And she's like, if this house is haunted, I want to see it for myself so that I know that you haven't been wasting your life, basically.
Yeah.
So she insists on being put in the most haunted place in the house, and Eleanor suggests that she sleep in the nursery.
Well, she says, I want to find, is there treasure in the basement? What is there? And Nell's like, there's the nursery. And she's like, excellent, I'll stay there. Thank you, Eleanor. And everyone kind of looks at her like, Nell? And the doctor's real mad. No. And Nell immediately feels bad.
Yes.
And but she was just having a moment of self-pity.
And Dr. Markway's like, that won't work anyway. The door is locked and I don't have the key,
so you can't stay there. And Nell immediately is like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. You don't want to stay there. Please don't stay there. And she's like, oh, no, I'm staying there.
And they get to the top of the stairs and lo and behold,
doors are open.
Yeah, just wide open and
waiting. So she's like, can't get in, the door's locked. I'm going in! And possibly because this movie was made in 1967, she does not stay with her husband.
Well,
That's not even like a question. Like, because he's not staying in the nursery. And she's not like, where's our room?
Yeah.
She's like, where am I going to sleep? Like, that wasn't already a given that she would be staying with her husband. So I wondered if it was like the whole Dick Van Dyke, they slept in 2 separate beds.
I was thinking
thing.
Lucy and Doug, the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, I think the censors were like, no, that's improper. And we're not going to let you.
She has to stay in another room.
Yeah. So, and this
Which
is also...
I've always been curious, like, do people at the time growing up expect to sleep in a separate bed?
I think it was a class thing. Like, I think that big houses, like the estates that owned all the surrounding land, I think that they were probably used to having their own separate rooms and then having a literal marriage bed where they did their business. But apart from that, they slept in their own separate rooms. But I think that, that people that couldn't afford to have a flippin' mansion, they slept in the same bed. Because that's honestly more economical.
Right.
So
I need 4 bedrooms.
So yeah, I think that in the case of this film, it was probably more of the censors who were like, oh, no.
You can flirt with an unmarried woman, but you can't sleep in the same room as your wife.
Exactly. And if you were single, it'd be perfectly fine if you were alone in this house with this woman. But you're married, sir.
So it is improper.
So this is the first moment where Luke, the delightful fool that he is like, wait a minute, those doors were locked and they're not locked anymore.
Luke has the best lines in this scene. So when they see the doors are open, because Luke up to this point does not believe in anything.
No.
Like,
he's very
skeptical. He just keeps saying, like, no, it's a draft, and like, nothing is happening. And no. So they're walking up the stairs, he sees the open doors, and he's like, I haven't seen a damn thing. I just don't like how it looks. And it was so perfect. And then his wife is like insisting to stay there. And Luke says to Doc Smolder, he's like, only one way to argue with a woman, Doc. Don't.
And that's true, at least for me.
Yeah.
Don't argue with me.
Like, he just has the best lines. But yeah, that was my favorite, was I haven't seen a damn thing. I just don't like how it looks. So yeah, the wife goes and stays in the nursery. Dr. Smolder is like, hey, my wife's going to stay up here all by herself, so why don't you, the rest of us, all stay in the parlor downstairs together?
Yes.
Because that's logical. Well, Luke, I think, is supposed to be patrolling.
Yeah, says that they'll take turns.
He's like, I don't want my wife in the nursery. That's terrifying. So I'm going to sit down here and keep watch over Theo and Nell.
Yes.
Like, he's sleeping in a chair while they're on a couch. Nowhere near his wife.
And Luke basically immediately fails at his job and sneaks into the parlor so he can drink booze straight from the bottle.
Okay, but this scene was so good. Can we talk about that for a second?
Oh, for sure.
The whole movie had like background music and like creepy whatever. So it shows the doctor asleep in the chair and Nell and Theo asleep on the couch, and it is dead silent. Not one noise. And like, Luke sneaks in the room and he's being super quiet because he doesn't want to wake anyone up. And you know that like hushed quiet when it's nighttime and everything, it's like just snowed or something. Like It felt like that. And Luke goes over and gets a drink and he like pulls off the top and all you hear is like the poop, and he like looks around because like that was so loud because it was so quiet. And he like takes a drink and it's so just like eerily quiet, and then all of a sudden that banging starts.
Oh,
and
all of a sudden the door to the library slams shut.
Oh, that's what it
bang.
is. Yeah, the door slams shut, and it's like the loudest because you just have been sitting there in this like dead quiet. I loved that. Like, that was the best effect for me. It was just the dead silence.
Yes.
It was so good.
And they are jolted awake.
Yes.
And Dr. Markway is immediately like, what the hell are you doing down here? You're supposed to be
on watch upstairs.
Yeah.
And he's like, I got thirsty. And he's like holding this huge bottle of booze.
And then the pounding starts.
Yes.
And Dr. Markway is like, I got to get up there to the nursery. And Nell's saying, no, there's nothing up there. It's down here.
Yeah.
Because once again, Nell is like, it's me that it wants.
Which she's loving the attention.
Yes.
Yeah, the house wants me, not your wife.
Yeah.
Why would they want her? Who wants her? Looking at Dr. Smolder. So
something is once again trying to get into the room. And this was a very cool scene.
Very cool scene.
Because something is pushing on the door trying to get in. And the door, this heavy wooden door, from the force of whatever supernatural thing is trying to get inside the room, is bending inward.
Which I read in the trivia, it was a rubber door.
Yes.
But it looked so cool.
Yeah, they did a great job with it.
And I love, because I am a little over CGI. I'm looking at you, Hobbits 1, 2, and 3. But sometimes it's better to just use a person than make a CGI Legolas on a beach. I'm just saying.
Practical effects hold up so much better.
Yes. And so this is one of those moments where it's like, it was a rubber door, but it looked like a real door, and it looked amazing when they were like bending it into the room. So I love the creativeness of old movies instead of the laziness of CGI of today's movies.
If they were to make that exact same scene today, they would use a CGI door so that it could bend whatever way that they wanted it to, and then 10 years from now it would look very fake.
Yes, instead of this movie that's 50 years old and looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, anyway, big fan.
Totally agree.
And the banging like stops and then gets louder again. The doorknob is moving. They're doing all the things. And then the pounding starts going on the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, Dr. Smolder's like, ah, crap, it's in the nursery. I gotta get upstairs. And he starts trying to get out. And Nell's like, well, it doesn't want him. It wants me. And runs out a different door.
Yeah.
And this is the cool nightgown scene. So she's running all over the house, and her nightgown is just flowing as she's running. And
they're playing that twisted version of You Are My Sunshine.
Twisted version of You Are My Sunshine. And she is just running from room to room, talking about how in her inner monologue, she's like, I want to stay here forever. The house wants me, not her. Like, it's so weird.
Yes.
Like, she's upset that the house would ever dare attack someone else because it's supposed to want her.
Because it's hers.
Yeah. So she's like running all over. There's lots of creepiness in this scene, like disorienting views of the statues that are everywhere or the
lots
mirrors.
Of great camera work.
Yes. Like she's running down the hall and sees a mirror and like jumps back at her own reflection, but it looks so distorted almost that you understand why it scared her, you know? And everything, it's that funhouse effect you were talking about. All the camera angles are like wide and weird, and
the walls look like they're bending.
Yeah.
They must have used some kind of weird like fisheye lens or something.
Yes, because everything just looked weird. And she ends up in she gets tangled in curtains at some point. It was weird. Anyway, she ends up in the nursery. And Mrs. Markway isn't there. Mm-hmm. And it looks sort of torn apart.
Yeah. The bedclothes are all disheveled.
Yeah. And she's just gone. And Nell kind of gets jealous and has this whole inner monologue about how she's disappearing inch by inch into the house. Mm-hmm. They can't... So everybody else finds her in the nursery. And they're like, where's my wife? And they decide that they're all going to go together and find her because they don't want to split up. And so Nell immediately runs away when their back is turned and goes to the conservatory to talk to Hugh Crane. And she's like, we killed her, you and I.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
Yeah.
How?
There's no evidence that Mrs. Markway is dead.
Right.
But Nell is already dancing on her grave with Hugh Crane.
Yeah. Like dancing. She has this whole weird dancing scene, again, to the You Are My Sunshine around the statue.
Yeah.
And she seems like almost in a trance-like state.
Yes.
And she just has this inner monologue, like, I want to stay here always, and I'm disappearing into the house, and it's a part of me, and I'm a part of it, and it's real weird.
And at this point, I think that it's become, like, pretty clear that Nell was super unbalanced already when she got there. Mm-hmm. And she was the one that I think had the most cracks in her like protective psyche that the house could get into, because she was already very vulnerable. Yeah. She was very like afraid of being alone. And so the house being able to put out this hand of, well, when you're here, you're never alone.
Yeah.
And
when you're here, you're family.
So I think at this point when she's broken, she's past the breaking point, and now I think that she's in that trance-like state because the house is almost possessing her, and it's calling the shots now. Mm-hmm. And she's just along for the ride, but at least she's not driving solo.
Yeah. And I forgot, we didn't talk about why she was chosen. Because we said that Theo has like really strong ESP abilities. So she was chosen because for 3 days when she was 10 years old, rocks rained from the sky onto her house. And when Dr. Smolder tells her that's why he picked her, she starts freaking the crap out and is like, no, the neighbors were throwing rocks because they hate us. Like her mom had beat it into her that she, like nothing had happened. Mm-hmm. And so now she's at this house and she realizes, oh no, I'm special. And the house wants me because I'm special. Like, I think that has something to do with it too.
Yeah, definitely.
So she's dancing all around. She's running all over. She knows that everyone is looking for her. I think she hears them calling for her or something. So she's running all over and she ends up in the library and she's pretty quickly like, totally fine in here. Like, I can be in here now. Yeah, I belong here. And she looks up at the like spiral staircase that leads up to the, what do you call it, balcony?
Yeah, it was like a little tiny balcony.
Like a little tiny balcony at the very top, which, why? So that the one wife could hang herself. Like, that's it. Like,
that's what I was wondering. There's a door at the top of the tiny balcony and no one ever opens it.
Yeah.
And does it go out on the roof?
I don't understand why it's a thing.
Yeah.
It goes into the attic, I think they say. So maybe it's just like the worst attic entrance ever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she climbs up these stairs. She looks at it and I think she's like, hey, the companion hung herself there. I can do the same thing. And then I'm a part of the house.
Yeah.
So she starts going up the stairs and really cool camera angle of just like swirling up the spiral staircase.
Yes.
And it was really dizzying and disorienting and looked really cool.
Yeah.
So she's climbing up the spiral staircase and she starts to get dizzy and it's like shaking and she stops halfway up and realizes like, oh, this is dangerous, and smiles and keeps going. Like,
yes,
that creepy smile as she was like, oh, this could fall down at any minute. Awesome.
I know.
Like, it was really, really weird and hard to watch, kind of.
Yeah.
So she gets up to the top of the stairs, or she's like trying to get up, and they all run into the library. And the angle that was like her looking down on them, that was that weird camera angle where they all looked sort of distorted. Mm-hmm. And this was a change from the book as well, because in the book, Luke goes up after her and she really snarkily was like, now you come after me. And he's like, I'm going to push you down the stairs. Like, it's this whole thing. Like, weird interaction where you could tell he didn't want to be there, but he felt like it was his human job to save someone.
He can't help but be gallant, but he is super over her shit.
Yeah. Like, he's just like, shut up, no.
Yeah. But in the movie,
it's the doctor, obviously, who goes after her. And he starts going up the stairs after her, and he's like, stay there, I'm coming to you. And she's like, nope, and keeps going up the stairs. And he gets up the rickety stairs all the way to the top, and they like have a moment. She like leans back all dramatically over the balcony, and he kind of looks at her like, really? And then like reaches out and he like caresses her face so tenderly.
Yes.
And like holds her hands and is just like, come with me, Nell, I need you, or something. I don't remember. Like, gets her to come with him. Do you remember what he says?
No, but that face caress was definitely like the moment.
The moment that she was like, okay.
And then right as she's kind of turning to follow him, the trap door above them opens and Nell sees the like crazed face of Mrs. Markway.
Which like, because you just saw her as a like well put together lady. So for the first minute you were like, hold up.
Yeah.
His face was that.
Yeah.
Like, what's happening right now?
She has like soot on her face. Her hair is all crazy.
And this was definitely the moment I jumped. I knew it was coming. I still jumped. Because I started convincing myself, like, no, maybe that was the other movie.
Oh, you were thinking it was maybe like the House on Haunted Hill or something.
Yeah. And then it happened, and I was like, ah.
Yeah. And then, so it fades to black because Eleanor faints at the sight of Mrs. Markway.
Because she's a delicate, crazed woman,
yeah,
as we've talked about before.
Well, and I wondered if that might have startled the house out of her brain. And so she lost consciousness, and then she comes to and she's telling Dr. Markway, I saw your wife. She was in the trapdoor. And he's like, I don't know who or what you saw, but we're getting you the hell out of this house right now.
And he's basically like, you have to leave. And they just start kicking her out of the house. And she's like, no, I don't want to go. And they're like, we don't care. Get in the car. Like,
and I wasn't sure how genuine his intentions were at this point, because he was being so adamant, and they had just had that moment that I was cynically thinking, like, you don't want her to get out of here because she'll be safer if she's gone. You want her to get out of here because she's a complication and you can't handle it anymore.
I totally felt like it was a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Like, well, conceal, don't feel. Get in the car, women. Like,
Conceal, don't
Sorry, that's my life motto. But
that is a terrible motto.
I know. I can't help it. So, but he definitely gave the impression that he was pushing her out for her safety but like, he's a doctor. I guess he's a doctor of, what do they say, anthropology, though, right?
Yeah, he's not a medical doctor. He's a PhD.
I thought he was a psychologist in the book. Am I wrong?
He is a psychologist in the book, yeah.
So in the book, because this same thing happens in the book, and I was real upset by it in the book, that he, a psychologist, was like, you just tried to kill yourself. Get in the car. We're kicking you out of here with no support or help at all.
I thought the same thing. And everyone is offering to drive her home. Like
and
useless
like,
Arthur
no,
is like, I'll drive her.
Alone.
Yeah, it's best if she goes alone and forgets about all of us. And it's like, what? This doesn't make any sense.
You're a doctor.
Yeah. So at least in the movie, they're like, get in the car now. Luke's going with you, and we're
going to get you help.
Yeah.
Basically.
We're going to send you home. And she's like, I don't have a home to go back to. Hill House is my home now. I have nothing to go back to. I lied about the apartment. There's nothing. And they're like, nope, we don't care. Get in the car. You're going somewhere.
Yeah, you have to get away from this house, basically.
Yeah. Closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So get in your adorable little 1960s automobile.
Yeah.
So she has another little moment saying goodbye to Dr. Smolders. He smolders more smolderingly than he ever has.
So much meaning and feeling with his eyeballs. Mm-hmm. It was ridiculous.
And she's playing it cool. She's like, oh, who do I thank for a wonderful time? And meanwhile, Luke hops out of the car and is like, oh, doctor, we need to get the keys to the gate.
Yeah.
And as soon as he's out of the car, Nell starts speeding away on her own down the driveway. And why did they let her drive when she's in such a state? I know she was like, I'm driving. It's my car. It's half mine. But
and the doctor was just kind of like, it's fine. Let her drive.
Yeah.
It's not fine.
Why are we letting her drive?
People? Right.
That's like if you try to take a drunk person's keys away and they get indignant and you let them drive away. That's not how it works.
Right?
Like,
you're just like, yeah, that's fine. That's no big deal.
So she is once again kind of like you mentioned in the library. It's like she's in a trance-ish. It feels like the house is in control. But she's starting to fight back because she realizes what's happening is the car is driving itself into a tree.
Yeah.
And she's not wanting it to happen.
Oh, no.
But then, immediately after, she goes, oh, okay, actually, no, this is totally fine. And
that's fine. I
want to be part of the house forever. And then there's
part of the ship, part of the crew. She wants to be part of the house.
And there's one final good little mini jump scare where Mrs. Markway, dressed all in white, like skitters out in front of the
behind the tree, and she crashes into the car, and you're just like, she just swerved into the tree because this lady popped out. But she was really already driving towards the tree, which is what they all say. So,
and it's the same tree that the first Mrs. Caryn, that her carriage overturned.
Yeah. Yeah. So they all run up to the car, and the doctor's like, she's dead. And his wife pops out, and he's like, oh, hey, here's a jacket. You just killed her. And she's like, No, I didn't. She was clearly already driving towards the tree, and they're all like, okay. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
He accuses her of killing her. And then she's
they're all like, it's
no. Fine. And they're just like, oh, okay, you're probably right.
That's it. The doctor goes to call the police and explains that it's perfectly safe for him to go in the house now because it has what it wants for now.
For now, yeah.
And Luke is glaring at the
ends
house.
with it, and he's like, this place should be burned and covered with salt. Like, he finally believes.
He finally gets it.
Yes.
So then it fades to black, and it shows that same creepy opening shot of Hill House again.
Yeah.
And they repeat the same description of the house from the novel about it standing for 90 years and maybe 90 more, and walls meeting and floors being sound and whatnot. But they change one key line. So at the beginning they had said that those who walk there walk alone. And this time it's Eleanor's voice narrating it. And she says, we who walk here walk alone. And I loved that. It was the perfect end note.
I missed that. That's fabulous. Yeah.
So, and then roll credits.
Roll credits. Which actually happened at the beginning because it was a 1960s movie. Yeah. But, whatever. It's at the end in all spooky letters.
Playing Nell's theme. So, yeah. So, lots and lots of changes from the book.
I like that, because in the book, she drives her car and is having one of her whiny, ridiculous inner monologues where she's like, I don't want to leave. And then you're just like, talks about how she speeds up the car, and then you don't really know what happened.
Yeah, you assume she's dead because the narration she's dead, essentially cuts off.
But it kind of doesn't tell you. Mm-hmm. And so I liked that this was more like the house made it happen, but she didn't really fight it, rather than she just wanted to drive her car into a tree and stay forever. I don't know.
Yeah, this one, they were definitely more deliberate with making it seem like the house killed her.
Yes.
And so it won, basically. Yes. It claimed her.
Yes.
But awesome haunted house story.
Absolutely.
I was kind of sad to learn that all of the sets were built on a soundstage, because if that was a real house, I'd like to visit it. Like, it would feel like touring the Winchester Mansion.
You can still go see the outside?
That's true.
I'm sure it's there somewhere.
Yeah. Gosh, there's probably all kinds of cool crap we can go look at, so.
Plus, it's in Stratford-upon-Avon, which I want to go to anyways.
Yep. So. Deal. I mean, I just invited myself on your trip, but you're fine with it, right?
I gotta tell you, I would not want to leave the country without you, because you've done it before, and I'm totally terrified I'm going to get kidnapped and not come home.
I'll tell you, I got like a weird sort of good instinct for navigating in foreign countries, especially Spain. I'll be totally lost in Madrid, like driving a car in a panic, and then I'll be like, oh, I need to turn left here, and here I am. I'm at the Reina Sofia. That's where I wanted to go.
Good. I need that, because I got nothing.
So I can't offer any like deliberate or useful help, but I guess I'm lucky.
I get lost without my mountains, so...
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why the south end of the valley here, I get lost because the mountains are on the wrong side. So.
Nope. I completely agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we are planning, I don't know if they'll necessarily be in order because Jill and I are fickle women, but we will pretty soon here be reviewing the 1999 version, in which the role of Luke is played by Owen Wilson.
Who we just love and we have loved forever.
Yes. And Theo is Catherine Zeta-Jones, who, if I recall, makes a perfect Theo.
Oh, absolutely.
And the Doctor is played by Liam Neeson.
Mm-hmm.
Who, if you haven't already watched him in Life's Too Short trying to be a comedian, you need to, like, Google that right now. And then we, as Jill mentioned, we're also planning to review the Netflix series, The Haunting of Hill House, as well.
Yes. Which I can't wait to watch again.
Yeah, it was so good.
So good.
So we'll get into those and lots more horror next time on Scream Girl Squad.